Within just 24 hours of Claude Sonnet 5 release, two very different opinions have formed in the AI community. One is taking it is totally underwhelming, while the other is claiming it is the best value in AI right now. So the question is, why such a contrasting opinion? Are people really not able to understand the true purpose and the capability of this model? And to answer that, instead of coming up with a hurried video claiming Sonnet 5 is this, Sonnet 5 is that, I went through all the real world tests, the benchmarks, the pricing structure, the actual token economics, and the arguments splitting the developer community in half. So by the end of this video, you will very well be able to figure out what Sonnet 5 really is, what is the hidden pricing catch, how it compares to Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5, how does it actually perform, and most importantly, who should be using Sonnet 5 and who should not touch it. Let's get straight into it. Let us start with the basics because the agentic label is doing a lot of work here. Sonnet 5 can plan, use tools like browsers and terminals, and run autonomously in a way that a few months ago required much larger models. Compared to Sonnet 4.6, the improvements are real across reasoning, tool use, coding, and general knowledge work. On SWE Bench Verified, it scores 63.2%, a huge jump over 4.6 and roughly 6 points behind Opus 4.8. On Terminal Bench 2.1, it hits 80.4%, closely rivaling Opus. It runs neck and neck with Opus on HLE, and on GDP Val, the benchmark for standard professional knowledge work, it actually outperforms Opus outright. It carries a full 1 million token context window, and it is now the default model for free and pro users across every Claude plan. So on paper, this looks like a clean win. Nearly Opus level performance available to everyone at a fraction of the price. But here is where both opinions hit the same wall, and it is the detail that turned this whole release into an ugly debate. Let's have a look. The next couple of minutes are extremely crucial. Just pay a bit more attention. This is the part both sides of the debate have flagged independently, and it is worth understanding carefully because the sticker price is not the whole story. Sonnet 5 has switched to the Opus 4.7 tokenizer. That means the same piece of text now tokenizes into roughly 1 to 1.3 times more tokens than before, depending on the content. Anthropic has set the introductory price at $2 input and $10 output per million tokens, running through August 31st, 2026, specifically to keep real-world costs roughly neutral despite that tokenizer change. It is a clever move, but it also means the headline pricing is not really telling us what we will actually pay. And in practice, this shows up as a real efficiency problem. Sonnet 5 reasons longer, calls more tools, and burns through more tokens to finish the same task. In one comparison, Sonnet 5 running in max mode came out only about 72 cents cheaper than Opus 4.8's own max mode. At that gap, the entire reason to use Sonnet over Opus starts to disappear because we would be paying nearly the same price for meaningfully weaker performance. The other perspective lands on a gentler version of the same conclusion. For similar tasks, Opus 4.8 on Medium runs around $8 and Sonnet 5 costs about half that for only a 5% drop in pass rate. Half the price for a 5% hit is a good trade. Nearly the same price for a bigger hit is not. So the honest read is that the token efficiency genuinely varies by workload, and that single variable explains a lot of the disagreement we are about to see in the real-world tests ahead. As we move to the most crucial portion of the video, do tell me, which AI is your absolute favorite? Plus, hit that like button and press that lonely subscribe button as well. This is really surprising. The critical opinion is grounded in a full battery of generation tests, and the results have been rougher than the benchmarks are suggesting. The macOS clone came out genuinely functional. Working notification system, a top bar with light and dark mode toggles, a working Safari, mail, calendar, notes, and even a playable FPS shooter generated inside the clone. That part impressed. But it took approximately 40 minutes in max mode and burned through a large number of tokens to get there, which was called simply not efficient. The Minecraft test was more mixed. Water dynamics worked, mobs like villagers and creepers appeared, block placement functioned. But there was no block break animation, no inventory system, no infinite terrain, and when asked to generate a cave system, it did not actually build one. The verdict landed at 6.5 out of 10. The front-end test was where the cracks really showed. A SaaS landing page came out visually mimicking Anthropic's design language, but components on the page did not render correctly, and the layout broke in places. GLM 5.2 was noted to produce a better front-end on the same kind of prompt, and SVG generation was called one of the most underwhelming domains for the entire model. Asked to render a BMW M4 in side view, even at the highest reasoning setting, the proportions and identity of the car simply were not there. The identical prompt run through Opus produced a recognizable result. That gap led directly to the harsh conclusion: stick with Opus and rank Sonnet 5 below GLM 5.2 for anything creative. So that is one side of the story. But the other opinion is built on a completely different kind of test, and it reached a completely different result. Let's have a look. Where the critical take focused on generation quality, the more favorable opinion is built around a direct head-to-head against GPT 5.5 on a single shared prompt. Build a 3D boat simulator with configurable rain, wind, and waves. GPT 5.5's version had a serious problem. No camera movement, a ship that did not move, water that stayed static. The rain effect was genuinely impressive, but everything else fell flat. Sonnet 5's version worked. The waves moved, the ship moved, and when the wind was increased, the waves responded and started crashing into the ship in a way that was described as rather impressive. On this specific test, Sonnet 5 beat GPT 5.5 clearly, with a UI that was said to be simply better across the board. Now here is the honest nuance. GPT 5.5 remains significantly cheaper in almost every respect. So if raw price per task is the deciding factor, GPT 5.5 still has an edge. But on pure output quality for that specific creative technical task, Sonnet 5 won. Two tests, two different kinds of tasks, two different conclusions. And that gap is exactly why the practical recommendation from the more favorable opinion matters so much, because it resolves the contradiction better than either verdict alone. So here is a strategy that makes the most sense out of everything we have covered so far. The idea is simple. Use Opus 4.8 for planning and Sonnet 5 for execution. When starting a new complex project, switch to Opus in its highest reasoning mode and use plan mode specifically. Let Opus spin up its full sub-agent workflow, potentially thousands of coordinated agents, to design the architecture properly, ask the right clarifying questions, and produce a detailed plan. Once that plan exists, the execution itself does not need the smartest model in the world. It needs a model that can follow a well-defined plan reliably and cheaply. That is exactly where Sonnet 5 earns its keep. Switch to Sonnet 5 on a lower reasoning setting, hand it the finished plan, and let it execute. Comparable project quality came out this way for dramatically less money because all the expensive thinking already happened during planning. This single workflow explains why the two opinions we started with are not actually contradictory. If we throw Sonnet 5 at open-ended creative generation with no detailed plan, the way the critical test did with the SVG and landing page prompts, the token inefficiency and reasoning gaps show up hard. If we use it the way it was actually designed, as the execution layer underneath a plan Opus already built, it becomes genuinely excellent value. The same logic applies to agent frameworks like OpenClaw and Hermes, where people have historically paid full Opus API pricing for every agent call. Sonnet 5 slots in as a much cheaper agent model, delivering performance close to Opus 4.8 for a fraction of the cost, specifically for the kind of coordinated tool-using agent work those platforms are built around. Now, before wrapping up, there are two more threads worth pulling, because the community debate around this model goes beyond just Opus. Beyond the two opinions we have covered, the wider discussion across X and Reddit has settled into a fairly consistent shape. The Opus versus Sonnet debate has a clear consensus. Sonnet 5 is an excellent all-rounder, but it does not fully replace Opus for deep thinking tasks. People doing genuinely hard reasoning, architecture decisions, novel problem solving are still reaching for Opus. Sonnet 5 is for everything else, which for most of us is most of what we actually do day to day. The GLM 5.2 comparison is where things get more heated, and the SVG and front-end results we just covered are exactly why. Developers running GLM 5.2 inside coding harnesses reported feeling close to Opus 4.8 for real coding and planning work, often at a fraction of the cost, with some describing full daily driver switches. On raw coding loops and creative generation specifically, GLM 5.2 has a real claim, which lines up precisely with what we saw in the front-end and SVG tests. So, the honest summary across both individual tests and the wider community sentiment is this. For agentic execution work, especially when paired with an Opus built plan, Sonnet 5 is a genuine step forward. For open-ended creative generation without a detailed brief, it currently trails both Opus and GLM 5.2. So here we are with the Sonnet 5 review. By the way, have you tried this new model yourself? How has been your experience so far? Do share in the comments. And we shall be doing a lot more detailed deep dives into various aspects of this new model. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the updates on this. I'll see you in the next one.